most important person in my career would probably be my wife.
Very good. That's good. Good job.
And I'd like to have the word probably stricken from the record there, please.
Yeah, I know.
But if you're asking who my favorite boss, while I'm on the record and I have a number of former bosses in the building, right now, clearly my favorite former boss is Councilman Rosendahl.
All right, well, here's a tough question. I'm chairman. Who's your favorite?
Don't live in the moment.
Here's one, Billy. Who's your favorite councilman overall from history, other than your boss?
Well, again,
man, hesitation tells the answer. You don't have to ask.
I like them.
Like the question.
I love them all, but Councilman Rosendahl by far has been the best.
Sergeant, I gave him a shot at it. We're having a good energy this morning. Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl. You fill the room. Aaron, good. So this is good. All the permits are taken care of. The health issues, it's not affecting any neighborhood.
No.
Good job. Okay. Recommend approval.
Thank you. No, it's great.
So ordered.
Thank you.
Council.
Next item.
Under item 4, the Board of Airport Commissioners submits for council approval a contract, which would be joining in a general services administration contract with Eaton Corporation for electrical supplies and repair services for switchgear and uninterruptible power source equipment at the 3 airports, LAX, Ontario, and Van Nuys. The contract would have a term of 4 years, would be for a total amount not to exceed $2 million per year or $8 million over 4 years.
Very good. Mr. CAO.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Rosendahl, Bill Kreitz with the CAO's.
For that.
Oh,
go ahead.
Good morning. Bill Kreitz with the CAO's office.
Dave Shooter, Deputy Director for Maintenance and Engineering, LAWA.
I won't reiterate what the CLA said, but I will say that we're in favor of and recommend approval of this 4-year contract, primarily for 2 reasons. One, it continues support for the emergency backup power for LAWA's 3 active airports, LAX, Ontario, and Van Nuys Airport. And it also enables the department to obtain volume discounts related to the supplies and the equipment for and high voltage switchgear for an uninterruptible, that's a mouthful, uninterruptible power source for those airports. So for those reasons, we're in favor of this.
I would add that we are adding a tremendous amount of equipment with Bradley West that will come under this contract.
Mr. Rosendahl, you have a couple of questions, as always?
I think it's great, frankly. We've heard from the labor community that this lease does not include a labor peace agreement, which is a city policy for all hotels and city properties. Is it true? And if it is so, can we add a labor peace agreement back in before we approve it?
Just ask a technical question. This is for power for the facility, not for the hotels?
No.
It's for the facility.
Sorry, you skipped that out. Wrong.
Got it. Okay, good.
No problem.
Yeah, repair parts and repair services. Yep.
Got it. 5 is yours. Okay, good. Parts. And DWP's tuned in. They're right with you. Good. Any questions on this one, which is power source?
Great.
Got it. All right, let's go forward on this. Unanimous. Thank you. Next item, please.
The Board of Airport Commissioners, under item 5, submits for approval a lease with Airport Century Inn for the occupation and use of LAWA-owned property located on West Century Boulevard at LAX for continued operation of the Travelodge Hotel. The lease would have a term of 5 years and would generate rent revenues for LAWA of approximately $144,000 per year or $768,000 over the 5 years.
Mr. Rosendahl.
Yeah, I kind of previewed it for you. Good morning. We've heard from the labor community that this lease does not include a labor peace agreement, which is a city policy for all hotels and city property. Is it true? And if so, can we add a labor peace agreement back in before we approve it?
Mark Adams, Los Angeles World Airports. This was really just done to bring the current tenant under a revised lease that split off the Denny's property, which is, adjacent to the Travelodge.
Yeah.
We did not include a labor peace agreement, as far as I know, as you've indicated. In my opinion, it would be up to the council, but I don't. Whether or not you want to include a labor, you want us to take that step, but I don't think that's.
On this here, if you could compliance with city policies right here. Could you state, Lisa, this is Exhibit A, hand it to Mark.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, that lists all the things that they have to be compliant with.
We're compliant with all the tenant is compliant with all, under their lease, with all the regulations and ordinances and whatnot that are in the city, but there is no.
The project labor agreement is not specified in the contract.
Well, this isn't a project labor agreement would apply to like.
This is a land lease. This is not an operational lease.
And we have not, we've included many, as with this lease as others, the tenant complies with many of the things like living wage and service contract worker retention and all those other city ordinances, policies, and such. But there is not a labor piece component to this lease that I'm aware of.
Because there's no construction.
What are you talking about?
It's a 150-room motel, so there's, probably, maybe, at most, probably about 100 employees on site. I don't know the exact number.
Could you quickly expedite and meet with them and discuss it before we take it to council?
Well, let me just ask a question, Mr. Rosendahl. Mr. City Attorney, could you come forth here? What requirement does the city have in this? And when you say labor police, it's not a project labor agreement. What is the actual title?
Well, the labor peace agreement,
Name for the record.
D. Timothy Daze, Assistant General Counsel for the Department of Airports. The labor peace agreement that we have at the airports is for the prevention of strikes for the concessionaires within the LAX itself. What it does is that the concessionaires and their employees sign an agreement saying that the employers will not lock out and the employees will not strike during the term of the concession agreement.
Inside the terminals?
Yes.
Okay.
The outside the terminals on the airport properties, the lessees have to pay the living wage, which this particular lessee is paying to their employees at their place of business. So they're getting more than the minimum wage.
What are they making?
I'm going to use a ballpark figure. My recollection is that the living wage agreement for airport property is about $14 an hour. If they are not receiving health benefits. If they are receiving health benefits, I think it's like $11.25. But please don't hold me to that number. But it's about those numbers.
Why don't you have the numbers ready? But let me just get a clarification. What Mr. Rosendahl talked of, quote, labor peace only applies for inside the terminal of the LAX operation only.
For the concessionaires, yeah.
So that's for that issue. Okay, so this does not, quote, qualify for labor police. They do, as a list of 10 or 12 things, follow city ordinances. Are any of those ordinances similar to what Mr. Rosendahl and I think Ms. Hahn championed years ago for the hotel workers?
Well, it would be the living wage.
Okay, it's the living wage. So they have that protection, but as far as a labor peace, and it's not a project.
Show us that information.
I'm sorry.
If you could get the exact information from Mr. Rosendahl before we take it to council, we'll schedule it for council. That would assure him that they are being met by the requirement of the laws. But there's two different things. A labor peace, as we call it, is internal to the airport and the operation of the contracts, the length of time where the people who fly and work at the airport are guaranteed that there's no strike. Is that correct? That's what you said?
For the concessionaires.
For the concessionaires. A project labor agreement is different when we're doing construction, which we do have existing at Tom Bradley and other parts at the airport. Is that correct, Mark?
Yeah.
And a number of things.
True.
What Mr. Rosendahl, if I could just say this here, try to think this out. You can't take that ordinance, which is inside the airport, out to this, but we have the minimum living wage ordinance, which protects all workers on that. We can't assign this in the sense to a union or whatever, but we do protect the workers through the living wage ordinance.
Yes, and it also does not prevent the the employees of a particular place from unionizing. They always have that option.
They have that right through state law.
That's correct, and federal law.
Good. All right, so Mr. Rosendahl, if you get that fax for Mr.
I'd
Rosendahl?
like the facts and information, obviously, before we vote. Is there anybody in the room here from the unions that has a comment to make? There's no one here from the unions. So obviously, their energy and interest would either need to come before us when we go before council, or they're saying a statement to us now by not being here. I honestly don't know. And so, therefore, what Mr. Laban just suggested, getting the data, getting the information, I'm officially saying where's the union in the room, and then we'll leave it at that, and then we'll...
Well, I think the union representative, very fine representatives here, but on this particular issue, well, wait a second, you got to fill out a card. The issue, though, is the CAO and the airport department, which wants to be good to all people, follow certain laws. Certain laws apply to this, which do cover it. There's no law which you speak of that takes what they have inside in the terminals to outside properties. That's correct?
That's correct.
So, in no disrespect to the union is here always monitoring, but at the same time, in this particular case, there's not an application. So, if you just get the facts to Mr. Rosendahl and myself, Mr. Buscaino, we'll schedule it when it is scheduled, but I don't believe this is an issue like we've had in other cases that the union has a strong vocal concern because they do believe in the living wage, which is so important. They would like everybody organized, but that's the responsibility of the workers and their skills to do that. Is that correct how I said it?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Any kind of labor piece.
If you're going to speak, you have to go to the mic.
Sure, I'll let you go to the mic, sure. Yeah, no problem.
Marks Gutierrez, SEIU, USWW. Labor peace agreements are very important to us. I would applaud the gathering of facts in this case and the answering of those questions of what will happen to the workers and what are the conditions, and to clear that up would be helpful. But we don't have any particular objection right now.
Very good. Thank you. So, with that being said, we'll recommend approval, but ask that the information be given Mark, and I'm going to put the responsibility on Mark, because everything Mark does, the city attorney sees, and then let us know. And we'll go forward, recommendation, approval. Thank you.
And I would just add, council has to act on this on or before Friday, April 19th.
Very good. Next item.
Under item 6, the Board of Airport Commissioners submits a proposed lease and license agreement with Qantas Airways Limited for premier passenger lounge space in the new Bradley Terminal at LAX. The agreement would have a term of 10 years and rent revenues for LAWA of at least $3.1 million in the first year, approximately $63.4 million over 10 years.
Very good.
Mark Adams, Los Angeles World Airports. Committee will recall council's already approved lounge leases for Air New Zealand and Korean Airlines, representing their airline alliances, Star Alliance and SkyTeam, respectively. This is the alliance, the One World Alliance, that American Airlines is the primary domestic component of that. Qantas is representing them in this lounge lease there at Bradley. It's a 42,000 square foot lease for their space there in the Bradley Terminal.
Very good. Mr. CAO.
Yes, Bill Kreitz with the CAO's office. The CAO has reviewed this proposed lease, and we recommend approval.
Very good. City attorney's approved it. Mr. Rosendahl, any questions?
Just one question.
Mm-hmm.
When will we be done? Do you have any sense of the Bradley ribbon cutting?
I don't want to say a specific date,
No,
but I would say I think we're looking at June. I'm just going to say June as for like the ceremonial ribbon cuttings and such. Yes.
Thank you.
Very good.
Just that's approximate at this point. The date will be forthcoming.
All right. Let's recommend approval for Qantas. We thank them.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
under item 7, a similar proposed lease and license agreement with Emirates Airlines for the development and operation of a premier passenger lounge at the new Bradley Terminal. The agreement would have a 10-year term and would generate at least $680,000 in rent revenues in the first year, amounting to approximately $13.8 million over 10 years. And the CAO has again recommended approval.
Wait, let's start with the CEO. CEO approve?
Yes.
Good.
This is similar to the lease that we just looked at, and for those reasons, we recommend approval.
Mark, anything to add?
Emirates has their own, this isn't an alliance lounge lease, this is a single airline lounge lease. It's a smaller space, it's only 9,000 square feet, but Emirates is entering into the same sort of lease.
How many flights does Emirates come in a week?
I think they have 1 or 2 daily.
1 or 2 daily, very good. And Qantas has how many, you know?
They have many more. But Qantas, again, is representing the entire One World Alliance, which would be, dozens of flights every day.
Mr. Rosa, any questions?
No, I go for it. It's great.
Good. Recommend approval and complete that. Any public comment? Any public complaints? I want to thank our staff, our sergeants of arms, and all who participated in this meeting. Have a good day. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.